My name is Mason Thompson, 32, and until last month I was just a software engineer grinding away in Tokyo. When my family said they planned something big for my birthday, I burned my vacation days and spent $1,200 on a last-minute flight. 8 years of savings, $158,000 for my dream home, all carefully transferred to my U.S. account. The moment I unlocked the front door, I knew something was wrong. Silent house, half-empty rooms, cake in the trash, and that yellow sticky note on the fridge changed everything. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join me on this wild journey of betrayal and justice. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house in Portland, Oregon. Nothing fancy, but it was home. My dad Richard worked as an accountant at a local firm, while my mom Diana taught 3rd grade at the elementary school just down the street. My younger sister Kayla was always the golden child, dance recitals, honor roll, the works. I was the quiet, reliable one. The steady son who never caused trouble but also never quite measured up to Kayla's sparkle in my parents' eyes. Despite this subtle family dynamic, I believed we were close. Sunday dinners were mandatory, even through my college years at Oregon State. I'd help Dad with yard work while Mom and Kayla prepared the meal, all of us gathering around the dining table to share our weekly highlights. These memories sustained me during my years abroad, or so I thought. After graduating with a computer science degree, I landed my first tech job at a startup in Seattle. The pay was decent, but student loans took a significant chunk of each paycheck. I lived with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment, eating ramen more often than I'd like to admit. But I was determined to build something for myself. 4 years into my career, an opportunity arose that I couldn't refuse, a senior developer position with a multinational tech company in Tokyo. The salary was nearly double what I was making, and the cost of living, while high in Tokyo, could be managed if I lived frugally. Most importantly, it was my chance to accelerate my savings for the one thing I dreamed of since childhood, owning my home, free and clear. The 8 years that followed were a testament to discipline and sacrifice. I rented a tiny studio apartment in a less fashionable Tokyo neighborhood. Just 350 square feet of space that served as my bedroom, living room, and office. My daily routine was meticulously calculated to maximize savings: convenience store breakfasts, company-subsidized lunches, and simple home-cooked dinners. Weekends weren't spent exploring Japan's beautiful countryside or enjoying Tokyo's legendary nightlife. Instead, I picked up freelance coding projects, adding another 20 hours of work to my already demanding 50-hour workweek. Vacations? Those were rare luxuries. In 8 years, I returned home only twice for Christmas, staying just long enough to maintain family connections before flying back to resume my grind. Every month, like clockwork, I transferred a significant portion of my salary to my U.S. bank account. My parents had helped me set it up years ago, a joint account that seemed practical at the time since they could handle any banking issues while I was overseas. I never questioned this arrangement. They were my parents, after all. I trusted them completely. Despite the physical distance, technology kept us connected. Weekly video calls became our tradition. My parents would gather around their laptop on Sunday mornings, Saturday evenings for me in Tokyo, with Kayla often joining from her apartment across town. They'd fill me in on neighborhood gossip, local news, and Kayla's latest achievements: her promotion at the marketing firm, her new boyfriend Brendan who seemed so promising, her plans to eventually buy property when the market was right. Meanwhile, I shared sanitized versions of my Tokyo life, never revealing the true extent of my sacrifice. I didn't mention the invitations declined, the relationships that withered due to my unavailability, or the constant exhaustion. Instead, I focused on amusing cultural anecdotes and scenic photos that made my life seem more adventurous than it was. I wanted them to be proud, not worried. 3 months ago. Our weekly calls took an interesting turn. Mom mentioned they were planning something special for my upcoming birthday. Dad, usually reserved, couldn't contain his excitement, adding that it would be life-changing. Kayla chimed in with cryptic comments about how I deserved this after working so hard. At first, I brushed it off as typical birthday enthusiasm. But as the weeks progressed, their hints became more insistent. 2 weeks before my birthday, Mom called outside our regular schedule. "Mason, honey, we've been thinking," she began, her voice carrying that persuasive tone I recognized from childhood. "You haven't been home in over 2 years, and this birthday is special. We've planned something big that simply can't be done over video call." Dad got on the line next. "Son, I know it's expensive and you're saving, but some moments are worth the splurge. This is one of them." I hesitated. A last-minute international flight would cost well over $1,000, plus lost work time. My careful financial calculations didn't account for spontaneous trips. Then Kayla texted later that evening. "Don't be such a workaholic, bro. Some things are more important than money. This surprise is worth it. Trust me." Against my better judgment, I requested vacation time and booked the flight. Something about their insistence felt unusual, special even. Perhaps they'd organized a family reunion, or some meaningful celebration acknowledging my years of hard work. Whatever it was, their excitement was contagious, and for once, I allowed myself to break from my rigid savings plan. If only I'd recognized the warning signs hidden in their enthusiasm. Preparing for the trip home stirred a mix of emotions I hadn't anticipated. My tiny Tokyo apartment, which normally felt like a practical choice rather than a home, suddenly seemed like a sanctuary I was reluctant to leave. I'd established routines here: the morning jog around Yoyogi Park, the nodding acquaintance with the elderly couple who ran the corner convenience store, the predictable hum of my efficient life. Still, as I carefully selected gifts for my family, a handcrafted leather wallet for Dad, an elegant silk scarf for Mom, and a collection of exclusive Japanese skincare products for Kayla, I felt the familiar warmth of anticipation. These weren't mere souvenirs. They represented the connection I maintained despite the distance. The flight from Narita to Portland International stretched over 10 grueling hours. Wedged into an economy seat, I alternated between fitful sleep and scrolling through family photos on my phone. Images of Christmas gatherings, Kayla's college graduation, my parents' 30th anniversary celebration, moments I'd missed or briefly participated in before returning to my self-imposed exile. A flight attendant noticed me lingering on a photo of all 4 of us at the Oregon coast, taken before I'd moved abroad. "Going home to see family?" she asked, offering a coffee refill. "Yes," I replied, accepting the steaming cup. "My first visit in over 2 years." "That's wonderful." She smiled. "They must be so excited." "They're planning something big, apparently," I said, realizing how much I was looking forward to whatever surprise awaited. As the plane began its descent into Portland, I texted my family to confirm my arrival time. The responses were unusually brief. "Mom, great. Key under mat if we're not there. Dad, safe travels, son. Kayla, can't wait. Party popper." Something about their terseness struck me as odd, but I attributed it to being busy with surprise preparations. After clearing customs and collecting my luggage, I decided against asking them for a pickup and hailed a taxi instead. The taxi driver, a gregarious man named Phil, provided an unexpected tour of Portland's changes during my absence. New high-rises downtown, the expansion of the light rail system, and the gentrification of formerly affordable neighborhoods. "Property values have gone crazy," Phil informed me as we turned onto the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood. "Houses on this side of town are selling within days of listing, sometimes $50,000 above asking price." I nodded politely, mentally calculating how such market trends affected my home buying prospects. With my savings. I had hoped to purchase something modest but comfortable upon my return to the States, a place truly mine after years of transient living. As we approached my parents' house, the same one I'd grown up in, I noticed the absence of cars in the driveway. No sign of Dad's meticulously maintained Volvo or Mom's practical Honda. Even Kayla's flashy Audi, which she'd proudly financed after her promotion last year, was nowhere to be seen. "Looks like nobody's home," Phil remarked as he pulled up to the curb. "They're probably out getting last-minute things for the surprise," I said, more to convince myself than him. I paid the fare, adding a generous tip for his conversation, and wheeled my luggage to the front door. The house looked different somehow. The lawn, which Dad had always kept immaculately trimmed, appeared slightly overgrown. Mom's beloved hydrangeas beside the porch seemed neglected. Small details, perhaps insignificant to others, but jarring to someone who knew this home's usual state of care. I rang the doorbell and waited. No response. I rang again, then knocked firmly. The hollow echo confirmed what I already suspected: no one was inside. Remembering Mom's text, I lifted the doormat and found the spare key exactly where it had always been kept for emergencies. Standing on the threshold, key in hand, I experienced my first real moment of unease. Why plan a big surprise, insist I fly 10 hours across the Pacific, and then not be present for my arrival? It made no sense. Yet I dismissed the concern as quickly as it arose. Perhaps they were picking up a special cake, or gathering friends and family for a surprise party at a restaurant. With a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside my childhood home, completely unprepared for what awaited me. "Hello?" My voice echoed through the eerily quiet house. "Mom? Dad? Kayla? I'm home." Only silence answered. I wheeled my luggage into the entryway and flipped on lights as I moved deeper into the house. Something felt profoundly wrong. The living room, while containing our familiar furniture, appeared strangely barren. Family photos that had once crowded the mantelpiece were missing. The decorative items that had made this house distinctively ours, Mom's collection of hand-painted pottery, Dad's vintage model cars, the gallery wall of family vacation photos, all gone. In their place were half-filled moving boxes, their contents hastily packed. Labels written in my sister's unmistakable handwriting marked them: "Kitchen essentials, bedroom, important docs." My heartbeat quickened as I moved to the kitchen, calling out again with increasing urgency. The kitchen showed similar signs of disruption: cabinets standing open, revealing half-empty shelves. The refrigerator hummed in the corner, its normally cluttered surface cleared except for a single yellow sticky note. But before I reached it, something in the trash can caught my eye. Tilting out of the bin was a partially eaten birthday cake, its blue frosting smeared but still legible. "Happy birthday, Mason." Beside it lay crumpled paper plates, plastic forks, and empty champagne bottles. Evidence of a celebration. Without me. On my birthday. With trembling hands, I plucked the sticky note from the refrigerator and read the message written in my father's precise handwriting. "We used your money. $158,000 for the condo. We'll explain later. Sorry." The room seemed to tilt around me. 8 years of sacrifice. 8 years of tiny apartments, missed experiences, and relentless work. 8 years of transferring money faithfully into what I believed was my secured future. All of it, gone. I staggered to a kitchen chair and collapsed, the note still clutched in my hand. This couldn't be happening. There had to be some explanation, some misunderstanding. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone and called my father. Straight to voicemail. I tried my mother. Same result. Finally, I called Kayla, listening to the ring with diminishing hope. As if on cue, a text message notification appeared on my screen. From Kayla. "Thanks for the upgrade, bro. Best birthday gift ever. Face-blowing kiss." Attached was a selfie of my sister and parents, champagne glasses raised in a toast. standing in what appeared to be a luxurious condominium with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Portland's skyline. Their faces beamed with celebration. My father wore the leather wallet I'd brought from Japan. The physical symptoms hit me all at once, a wave of nausea, cold sweat beading on my forehead. Hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before emptying the contents of my stomach. Kneeling on the cold tile floor, I tried to make sense of what was happening. Perhaps this was still somehow part of the surprise? A strange, elaborate prank that would end with an explanation that would make us all laugh. I desperately searched for alternative interpretations, any scenario that didn't involve my family betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. I splashed cold water on my face and returned to the kitchen, determined to find answers. Opening my banking app, I logged into my U.S. savings account, the one I'd been faithfully feeding for 8 years. The balance that should have read over $158,000 now displayed a pitiful $212.47. The transaction history told the story: a withdrawal of $158,000 made 3 days ago, with the description: transfer to Diamond Luxury Properties. A quick internet search confirmed my worst fears. Diamond Luxury Properties was a high-end real estate developer specializing in luxury condominiums in downtown Portland. The very type of building featured in Kayla's selfie. My mind raced through the implications. My parents were co-signers on the account, a practical arrangement established years ago when I first moved abroad. I had never considered the possibility they would access the funds without my knowledge or consent. The legal reality dawned on me with sickening clarity: they had technical access to the money. What they had done might be morally reprehensible, but was it legally theft? I wasn't sure. I called my parents and sister repeatedly over the next hour, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Please call me back. I just want to understand what's happening. Did you really take all my savings? Is this some kind of joke? Finally, in my last message, the hurt and anger broke through. How could you do this to me? 8 years of my life. Everything I worked for. No responses came. Only silence. Punctuated by the hollow ticking of the kitchen clock, a sound from my childhood that now seemed to mock each passing moment of my growing despair. As evening settled into night, I wandered through the half-emptied house like a ghost. In my parents' bedroom, drawers hung open with remaining clothes hastily pushed aside. In the home office, the filing cabinet stood ajar, with empty folders labeled Mason's account and Family Finance. In Kayla's old bedroom, now used as a guest room, I found a discarded shopping list in her handwriting. Champagne. Birthday cake for M, moving boxes, storage unit? The calculated nature of their actions became undeniable. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. They had planned this betrayal, down to buying a cake they never intended to share with me. The something big they had planned for my birthday wasn't a celebration, it was a theft. They had lured me home not to surprise me with a party, but to empty my account while I was in transit, unable to intervene. The cake, the empty house, the hastily abandoned belongings, all part of a transition they hadn't quite completed before my arrival. As this reality settled into my consciousness, something inside me broke. The carefully constructed image of my family, imperfect but loving, sometimes favoring Kayla but fundamentally decent, shattered completely. In its place emerged a truth I had perhaps always known but never acknowledged. I had always been an afterthought, valued not for myself but for what I could provide. And now they had taken everything. Night descended on the empty house, bringing with it an oppressive silence broken only by my occasional sobs. I sat in my father's recliner, one of the few pieces of furniture left behind, surrounded by the shadows of my childhood home. Each familiar corner now seemed alien, tainted by betrayal. I scrolled through years of family photos on my phone, seeing them with new eyes. There was Kayla's college graduation, where my parents had splurged on a lavish party despite claiming financial struggles when I needed help with tuition. There was the family trip to Hawaii that had been planned during my 2-week visit from Japan, a vacation I largely financed as a gift to everyone. There was last Christmas, where my modest presents were politely acknowledged while Kayla's extravagant gifts to everyone, likely purchased with her perpetually maxed-out credit cards, received effusive praise. The pattern had always been there. I had simply refused to see it. Around midnight, driven by a need to understand the full extent of their betrayal, I began searching the house more methodically. In my parents' bedroom closet, behind a stack of old sweaters, I discovered a shoebox filled with letters and documents. Letters from my father to his brother, discussing how they could leverage Mason's overseas success. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers from my account to theirs dating back years, small amounts that I would never notice, building up over time. Most devastating was a handwritten letter from my mother to my aunt. Mason's always been so responsible and generous. He doesn't even check the accounts that closely. Just keeps depositing his money for that house he wants someday. Meanwhile, Kayla needs help now with her credit card debt. What Mason doesn't know won't hurt him, and will pay it back before he returns permanently. They never intended to pay it back. That much was clear from another letter, dated just 2 months ago, outlining the plan to use my savings for a down payment on a luxury condo that would be a wise investment for the family's future. My future was never considered. I sat on their bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of years of financial manipulation. This wasn't a one-time theft, it was the culmination of a long-term strategy to exploit my trust and absence. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Around 3 a.m., pacing through the house and estate between despair and rage, I noticed something I had overlooked: the deed to the house, framed and hanging in the hallway. I had always assumed the house belonged to my parents, but examining the document now, I made a shocking discovery. The house had been left to me by my grandparents when I was just 18, with my parents allowed to live there as trustees until I turned 35 or decided to claim it. I was the legal owner of this house. A house my family had been living in rent-free for years while I paid for my tiny Tokyo apartment. A house they were now apparently abandoning without consultation, having stripped it of valuables and memories. This revelation sparked something in me, a cold, calculating anger that cut through my grief with surprising clarity. I had been played for a fool, but perhaps not completely defeated. I still had one asset they hadn't managed to take from me. With shaking hands, I took down the framed deed and examined it more closely. The legal language confirmed what I had discovered. I was the sole owner. My parents had been entrusted as caretakers, not owners. They had no right to sell or leverage this property without my consent. I spent the remaining hours until dawn researching property laws and consulting online legal resources. By sunrise, I had formed a plan, one that would allow me to reclaim some small measure of justice from this devastating betrayal. As the first light of morning filtered through the curtains, I made myself a cup of coffee using the few supplies left in the kitchen. Sitting at the dining table where we had once shared Sunday meals, I stared at the deed beside my phone. The house they thought would always be their safety net. The house they assumed I would never reclaim because I was too busy building my life elsewhere. The house that represented my last remaining asset in a country that suddenly felt foreign and hostile. With a newfound determination, I picked up my phone and began searching for real estate agents who specialized in quick sales. At precisely 8 a.m., I called Valerie Chen, a real estate agent whose online profile emphasized rapid transactions and cash buyers ready. Her cheerful greeting contrasted sharply with my emotional state. "Ms. Chen," I began, my voice steadier than I expected, "I need to sell a house immediately. Today, if possible." "That's quite accelerated, Mr. Thompson," she replied after I explained my ownership of the property. "May I ask why the rush?" "Family emergency," I said simply. "I'm willing to accept below market value for a cash sale and immediate closing." Her interest piqued. Valerie arrived at the house within the hour. Professional and efficient, she walked through each room, making notes and taking photos. If she noticed the half-empty closets and general disarray, she maintained a diplomatic silence. The location is excellent, and the structure is sound despite some deferred maintenance, she concluded. In a normal timeline, we could list for around $425,000. For an immediate cash sale? Perhaps $375,000. I have several investors who might be interested. Do it, I said without hesitation. And please arrange for digital signing of all documents. I'll be returning to Japan soon. By noon, Valerie had 3 offers. By 2 p.m., I had accepted the highest, $382,000 from a property investment company that specialized in quick turnarounds. By 3:00 p.m., a for sale sign stood in the front yard, with a sold banner already slashed across it. At 3:17 p.m., my phone rang. Kayla. What the hell, Mason? She shrieked without preamble. There's a sold sign in front of the house. What are you doing? Hello to you too, Kayla, I replied, my voice deliberately calm. I'm selling my house. Your house? Mom and Dad's house. You mean? You can't do this. Where are we supposed to live? I'm curious, I said, ignoring her question. How's the new condo? The view looks spectacular in your selfie. A moment of stunned silence followed. Mason, listen. Her tone suddenly conciliatory. We were going to tell you about the condo. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The market is so competitive. And my $158,000? Were you going to tell me about taking that too? It's a family investment. She stammered. Your name is on it too. We needed to act fast, and you were on a plane and… Is my name actually on the deed, Kayla? Or just on the bank transaction that paid for it? Her silence answered my question. The house closes tomorrow, I continued. The new owners will take possession in 7 days. I suggest you inform Mom and Dad that they'll need to remove their remaining belongings before then. You can't do this, she hissed, panic evident in her voice. They put your name on that account. They could have used that money any time over the years. They were helping you save. And now I'm helping myself, I replied. What's fair is fair. The phone erupted with calls and texts after that. My father, furious and threatening legal action. My mother, tearful and claiming I was tearing the family apart. Kayla again, alternating between rage and desperate bargaining. I answered none of them. Instead, I called Gregory Wilson, an attorney I had researched overnight, and scheduled a consultation for that afternoon. Mr. Wilson, a silver-haired man with kind eyes that belied his reputation as a shrewd litigator, listened carefully to my story. He examined the house deed, the bank statements, and the documents I had discovered. The situation with the savings account is complicated, he admitted. As co-signers, your parents had legal access, though their actions were certainly unethical. However, the house is straightforward. It's yours, left to you by your grandparents. You have every right to sell it. And their threats of legal action? I asked. Empty, he assured me. They have no grounds. In fact, if you wanted to pursue it, you might have a case against them for the misappropriated funds, though family financial matters can be messy in court. I left his office with a weight lifted. My actions were legally sound, if emotionally devastating. The family that had betrayed me would now face consequences they never anticipated. That evening, as I packed my few belongings in preparation for returning to my Tokyo apartment, I decided to make one final search of the house. In the attic, rarely accessed and thick with dust, I discovered a box labeled simply, Mason. Inside were items I had assumed lost years ago: my grandfather's watch, letters I had written from college, awards from high school. Beneath these mementos lay a folder containing documents that made my blood run cold. loan applications in my name that I had never signed, credit cards opened using my social security number while I was abroad, tax documents showing my parents had claimed financial dependence I knew nothing about. This discovery transformed my understanding of the situation. This wasn't just about the $158,000 or the condo. This was about years of systematic financial abuse and identity theft, enabled by my absence and trust. With shaking hands, I photographed every document, creating digital evidence of their fraud. Then I called Mr. Wilson again, leaving a message about this new development. The house sale proceeded with remarkable efficiency. By the next afternoon, the funds were transferred to my Japanese bank account, an account my family had no access to. The closing documents were signed digitally from my phone. The transaction complete without my having to meet the buyers or attend a formal closing. As news of the sale spread through family channels, my parents' tone changed dramatically. The threats gave way to desperate pleas. They had, it seemed, used the $158,000 as a down payment on the condo, financing the rest, without the house to fall back on. Their financial situation was suddenly precarious. "Please, Mason," my mother sobbed during a rare call I actually answered. "We made a terrible mistake. We thought the condo would be for all of us, a family investment. We were going to surprise you with part ownership when you returned permanently. The way you surprised me with an empty house and a birthday cake in the trash?" I replied, my voice hollow. "Son," my father interjected, his voice uncharacteristically humble, "we can work this out. Family helps family. We've always supported your dreams. By stealing from me? By committing fraud in my name?" I countered, revealing my discovery of the attic documents. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. "You have 7 days to remove your belongings from the house," I said finally. "After that, anything remaining becomes property of the new owners." As I ended the call, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a profound sadness for what had been lost. Not just money, but trust. Not just savings, but family. The week that followed unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of consequences. My family, realizing the gravity of their situation, began making desperate moves to salvage what they could. Kayla's boyfriend Brendan, or rather, husband, as I discovered they had quietly married 6 months earlier without inviting me, called unexpectedly 3 days after the house sale. "Mason, it's Brendan. We've never really talked much, but I need to understand what's happening. Kayla's hysterical, your parents are talking about bankruptcy, and suddenly I'm hearing about fraud and identity theft." I explained the situation dispassionately, including my discovery of the documents in the attic. His shocked silence spoke volumes. "I had no idea," he finally said. "Kayla told me her brother was this wealthy programmer in Japan who never wanted to come home. She said you had abandoned the family years ago and only sent occasional money out of obligation." "And the condo?" I asked. "What did she tell you about that?" "That it was an investment opportunity her parents had been saving for. She never mentioned your money was involved." His voice had grown cold. "We've been married less than a year, and I'm already discovering she's built our life on lies." Within days, I learned that Brendan had moved out of the condo, filing for an annulment on grounds of fraudulent misrepresentation. This development sent Kayla into a tailspin of recrimination, blaming everyone but herself for the collapsing house of cards. Meanwhile, my parents faced their own consequences. The documents I had discovered revealed that my father had been using my identity to cover questionable transactions related to his accounting practice. Mr. Wilson, after reviewing the evidence, suggested this could constitute professional misconduct serious enough to jeopardize my father's CPA license. My mother, whose teaching career had always been a point of pride, now faced questions about financial impropriety when it was discovered she had listed me as a dependent on tax returns long after I had become financially independent, a clear case of tax fraud. As these revelations rippled through their professional communities, my family's carefully constructed social facade began to crumble. Friends and colleagues who had heard for years about their successful son in Japan now learned the truth about how they had treated that son. A week after selling the house, I received an unexpected call from Trevor Martinez, my closest childhood friend who had remained in Portland. "Mason, man, I just heard what happened. This is insane," he began. "Listen. Your parents and Kayla are looking for a place to stay. They've been calling around to everyone they know." "That's not my problem anymore," I replied, though the image of my family homeless did pierce my resolved detachment. "I know, and I'm not saying it should be," Trevor assured me. "But here's the thing, I have that rental property on Hawthorne. The one I renovated last year. I'm thinking of letting them stay there temporarily, with strict conditions. I wanted to run it by you first." I considered this. Trevor had always been a bridge between me and my hometown, sending occasional updates, and maintaining our friendship despite the distance. I trusted his judgment. "What kind of conditions?" I asked. "First, they pay actual rent, no freebies. Second, they acknowledge what they did to you, in writing. Third, they seek financial counseling and therapy. And fourth, any attempt to manipulate or badmouth you ends their tenancy immediately." It was a reasonable approach, one that offered consequences without cruelty. After discussing details, I agreed to Trevor's plan, with one addition: the rent they paid would go into a separate account, one that could potentially become restitution to me over time. 2 weeks after selling the house, with my family reluctantly settled into Trevor's rental property, I arranged a video conference with all 3 of them. It was time to present the evidence I had gathered and establish terms for moving forward. Their faces on my laptop screen appeared haggard, the strain of recent events evident in new lines around their eyes and mouths. My mother had been crying. My father looked as though he hadn't slept in days. Kayla, usually immaculately presented, appeared disheveled and defeated. "I've consulted with legal counsel about the documents I found," I began without preamble. "Identity theft, fraud, misappropriation of funds. These are serious crimes with potential jail time." "Mason, please," my mother interrupted, fresh tears spilling. "We're your family. Family doesn't steal from family," I replied evenly. "Family doesn't commit fraud using a loved one's identity. Family doesn't lure someone halfway around the world under false pretenses to empty their bank account." My father, always the pragmatist, cut to the chase. "What do you want, son? To send us to jail? To destroy what's left of this family?" "What I want is accountability," I said, "and restitution." I outlined my terms: full repayment of the $158,000 with interest over time, signed admissions of their actions, regular therapy sessions for all of them to address the dysfunctional family dynamics, and legally binding agreements preventing them from accessing any of my financial information in the future. "And if we refuse?" Kayla asked, a hint of her old defiance surfacing. "Then Mr. Wilson will proceed with filing criminal charges and civil lawsuits," I answered calmly. "The evidence is overwhelming. You'd lose everything, not just the condo and your freedom, but your careers and reputations as well." The reality of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had gambled everything on the assumption that family loyalty would ultimately prevent me from taking action against them. They had been wrong. After hours of negotiation, tears, recriminations, and finally grudging acceptance, we reached an agreement. They would sell the condo, which they could no longer afford anyway, and use the proceeds to begin repaying me. They would commit to the therapy and financial counseling Trevor had suggested. They would sign legally binding documents admitting their actions and relinquishing any claims to my assets. In return, I would not press criminal charges. I would allow them the dignity of rebuilding their lives without the stigma of public legal proceedings. I would maintain minimal contact rather than cutting them off completely. It wasn't forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that, and might never be. But it was a path forward that balanced justice with mercy, consequences with opportunity for redemption. As the video call ended, my sister asked to speak with me privately for a moment. "I know you hate me right now," Kayla said, her voice small. "But I need you to know something. This wasn't entirely Mom and Dad's idea. I pushed for it. I convinced them you would understand eventually, that you'd see it as helping family." She paused, seemingly struggling with herself. "I've always been jealous of you, Mason. Your focus, your success, your discipline, all the things I lack. Taking your money it was like finally winning against you." Her confession, perhaps the first honest thing she had said to me in years, didn't inspire the forgiveness she clearly hoped for. But it did provide a piece of understanding I had been missing. "Thank you for your honesty," I said finally. "That's a starting point, at least." In the days that followed, I established a legal trust with Mr. Wilson to protect my remaining assets and manage the repayment plan we had established. The condo was listed for sale, and though the market had cooled slightly, it would still provide substantial funds toward their debt to me. Trevor kept me updated on my family's compliance with our agreement. My parents had begun therapy, both individually and as a couple. Kayla had started financial counseling and taken a second job to contribute to the repayment. Small steps, but meaningful ones. As for me, I began the process of rebuilding my life with a new understanding of both my family and myself. The betrayal had broken something fundamental in me, my naive trust, my unquestioning loyalty, but in their place grew something perhaps more valuable: boundaries, discernment, and a clearer sense of my own worth beyond what I could provide to others. The money would eventually be repaid, at least in part. The relationship might never fully heal. But I had claimed my power in a situation designed to render me powerless, and that victory, painful though it was, would shape everything that followed. 6 months passed like a slow exhale. Tokyo's cherry blossoms had come and gone, their brief magnificence a reminder that beauty and impermanence often walk hand in hand. I had returned to Japan after settling the immediate aftermath of my family's betrayal, carrying with me not just the legal documents that protected my remaining assets, but also a profound shift in how I viewed relationships, trust, and my own value. My tiny apartment, once a symbol of sacrifice, now represented something different, a conscious choice rather than a temporary necessity. I had enough money from the house sale to purchase a more comfortable place, but I chose instead to remain where I was, allocating funds differently. Some went into diverse investments recommended by a financial advisor with no connection to my family. Some funded weekend trips to explore parts of Japan I had previously denied myself. And some supported causes that resonated with my emerging sense of purpose: educational scholarships for international students, and legal aid for victims of financial abuse. The repayment plan established with my family was proceeding, albeit with occasional friction. The condo had sold for less than they had paid, a consequence of their hasty purchase and the shifting market, but the proceeds had been dutifully transferred to the trust account Mr. Wilson managed. Monthly payments from their reduced incomes followed, small but consistent acknowledgments of the debt, both financial and emotional. Trevor's updates from Portland provided a window into their gradual reckoning with what they had done. My parents' therapy had revealed patterns dating back generations, my father's desperate need for status stemming from his own father's financial failures, my mother's inability to set boundaries with Kayla rooted in complicated guilt over perceived favoritism in her childhood. None of these insights excused their actions, but they offered context that helped me understand the family dynamics that had shaped all of us. Kayla's journey seemed the most transformative. Her marriage to Brendan had indeed ended, the annulment granted based on her misrepresentations. This loss, combined with the financial and social consequences of her actions, had apparently triggered genuine self-examination. According to Trevor, she had moved from her initial defensive anger to a more reflective state, engaging seriously with her therapy and financial counseling. 3 months after my return to Japan, I received a handwritten letter from her, the first communication initiated by any family member that didn't revolve around the repayment plan. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I'm not even sure I deserve it. But I want you to know I'm beginning to understand what I've done, not just to you, but to myself. Living constantly in comparison, always feeling entitled to more. Viewing relationships as transactions, it's a hollow way to exist. Seeing your response to our betrayal, controlled, principled, but not vengeful, showed me a different way of being. I'm trying to find my own version of that strength." I didn't respond immediately. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be restored through a single gesture, however sincere. But I kept the letter, recognizing it as potentially the first step in a very long journey towards something new between us, not the automatic trust of family, but perhaps eventually the earned respect of individuals who had faced a terrible truth together. My parents' communications remained more practical, focused primarily on repayment logistics and occasional stilted updates about their downsized lives. The emotional work of rebuilding any relationship would take far longer for them, complicated by their roles as both parents and perpetrators. I maintained polite distance while leaving open the possibility of more meaningful connection in the future, if and when they demonstrated sustained change. Meanwhile, my own healing progressed through channels I hadn't anticipated. I joined a support group for expatriates in Tokyo, finding unexpected comfort in sharing parts of my story with others who understood the complex dynamics of maintaining relationships across oceans. Through this group, I met Hikari, a Japanese-American translator whose warmth and uncompromising honesty gradually became important anchors in my life. I also reconnected with colleagues I had previously kept at professional arm's length, accepting invitations I would once have declined in favor of extra work hours. These emerging friendships, built on shared interests and mutual respect rather than obligation, revealed how isolated I had allowed myself to become in my single-minded financial focus. Most surprisingly, I found myself reconnecting with my grandparents' memory. The house they had left me had been intended as a gift of security and roots, purposes that had been corrupted by my parents' actions. But in reviewing old photographs and letters I had digitized before leaving Portland, I discovered aspects of their values that resonated deeply with my current journey. Their emphasis on integrity over appearance, their belief in self-sufficiency without isolation, their quiet generosity without expectation of return. 8 months after the betrayal, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Wilson. A distant cousin of my father had passed away, leaving a small property in coastal Oregon to be divided among relatives. My share would be approximately $45,000, not a life-changing amount, but significant nonetheless. "Your father asked if this inheritance could be directed toward his debt to you, Mr. Wilson explained. It's entirely your decision." I considered the request carefully. The money was rightfully mine, regardless of our situation. Allowing it to reduce their debt would be a choice, not an obligation. "Yes," I decided finally. "They can apply it to the outstanding amount. Please tell them I appreciate the gesture." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. But it was acknowledgement of effort, a small step toward whatever our relationship might become. As the 1-year mark of my birthday betrayal approached, I found myself reflecting on the transformation of that single devastating day into a catalyst for profound change. The financial loss had been substantial, but not ruinous. The emotional impact had been shattering, but also clarifying. From the wreckage had emerged a more defined sense of self, stronger boundaries, and a life built on conscious choices rather than inherited expectations. I no longer defined success merely as numbers in a bank account. I measured it in moments of genuine connection, in decisions aligned with my values, in the growing resilience that allowed me to trust selectively without paralyzing fear. On the actual anniversary, I arranged a small gathering at a local restaurant with my new friends, the first birthday celebration I had initiated in years. As we shared food and conversation, Hikari raised her glass in a toast. To Mason, she said, who lost what he thought he wanted and found what he actually needed. The simplicity of her words captured the essence of my journey. I had lost money, trust, and illusions. I had gained discernment, authentic connections, and a more integrated sense of self. Later that evening, I received a group text from my family, awkward but sincere birthday wishes accompanied by a photo of them sitting with Trevor, a homemade cake between them reading simply, "New beginnings." It wasn't a magical resolution or a Hollywood reconciliation. It was a small, imperfect gesture toward a future that remained uncertain but not without possibility. I sent a brief but polite response, neither coldly dismissive nor falsely warm. Another small step on a long road. That night, I stood on my tiny apartment balcony overlooking Tokyo's glittering expanse and felt something I hadn't expected, a sense of peace. Not because everything had been resolved or restored, it hadn't. Not because the pain had disappeared, it hadn't. But because I had navigated the worst betrayal of my life without losing myself in either vengeful rage or passive acceptance. I had found a middle path of principled response, one that honored both justice and the possibility of redemption. The deepest lesson wasn't about money, or even family. It was about worth, recognizing that my value had never been in what I could provide to others, but in my integrity, resilience, and capacity for both strength and compassion. No one could steal that from me, no matter what else they took. I know many of you watching have experienced betrayals of your own, perhaps not identical to mine, but painful nonetheless. I hope sharing my story has offered some perspective or validation for your journey. True healing isn't about forgetting or even necessarily forgiving too quickly, it's about reclaiming your power and moving forward on your own terms. Has someone ever betrayed your trust in a way that changed how you see relationships? Or have you found ways to rebuild trust after it was broken? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your wisdom might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to join our community of resilient souls finding their way through life's unexpected challenges. Remember, what defines us isn't the betrayal we experience, but how we choose to respond to it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and choose carefully who you allow to care for you.